A lot of people have been looking for a snake replacement in Smash Wii U. Someone with grenade shenanigans to exploit and abuse. Strange enough, I think the best replacement for Snake is Bowser Jr., but only with a specific custom. For some time, people have been more than capable of dealing with the normal Mecha Koopa, basically making it all but ineffectual. Instead, I recommend you try the Big Mecha Koopa, the Custom 3 variant. The Big Mecha Koopa does not hit an opponent when it's walking, and it doesn't really move very far, but the explosion is much bigger and the timer to natural detonation is much shorter. Today, I'm going to tell you how Big Mecha Koopa can be best utilized. Each version of the Big Mecha Koopa, like all three states that it could possibly be in, we will cover. That includes walking on the ground, holding it in your hand, and when you're driving around with it in the Koopa car. While the Big Mecha Koopa is on the ground and moving, it isn't treated as a traditional projectile. Reflectors will not turn it around, and it will absorb other projectiles until it explodes, roughly 5% damage. You can use it to control space, but you need some way to stop the opponent from just picking it up. Therefore, it's probably best to control the specific space around a ledge when they're recovering. You can simply lay the Big Mecha Koopa down and have it walk into a place where the opponent is most likely to be. The explosion will hit below the edge, so you can use it there, or you can have it walk behind you and have it cover a roll. Both instances are kinda hard to time though, so it's not the best, but it's still pretty useful. The Big Mecha Koopa also makes a halfway decent shield. If your opponent were to attack you and it at the same time, and do enough damage to make it explode, then they would take the damage while you would remain safe-ish, depending on whether or not you actually got hit. Perhaps the most interesting aspect, however, is when you mix this up with a grab. If the Mecha Koopa is walking nearby, and you grab an opponent, it will explode and hurt you both. However, in Smash for Wii U, you are invulnerable during a throw animation until you actually inflict damage. So while you could take the damage from the explosion, you could also back throw, the Koopa will explode, you will be fine, and he will be sent flying. When you're using it this way, I recommend you do a back throw instead of, say, a down throw. Since the down throw, even though it takes longer, you do damage more initially. Like you do initial spike 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, however many times the drill hits, and during that entire time you are vulnerable. Do note that this grab invincibility also applies when your opponent tries to pick up the Koopa, which means that you can effectively, when they try to pick it up, pummel them, wait for the Koopa to start exploding, and then back throw them. Even if you don't get the invincibility part, chances are by the time they recover, they'll take damage from the explosion anyway. Let's move on to what happens while you're holding the Big Mecha Koopa. The Big Mecha Koopa has about 3 seconds before it explodes and hurts you, and it really only flashes red once, so you kinda have to just get used to the timing and the explosion. You can dodge or block or even spot dodge the explosion, but what's really important about the Big Mecha Koopa is that unlike the small Mecha Koopa, which will just explode on your person, the big one will be large enough to hit nearby opponents. So a very effective strategy in this regard, and kind of the reason I made the comparison to Snake, is you can grab one of the Koopas, run up, shield, have the explosion hit your opponent, and you'll be fine. Strangely enough, the Big Mecha Koopa still has a hurt box, even when you're holding on to it. This can actually serve as a sort of protection, since it will more or less function the same way as when it's on the ground. If you're holding the Big Mecha Koopa, and your opponent comes in with an air attack and tries to hit you, they'll hit the Big Mecha Koopa at the same time, and they'll take damage from the explosion. This can effectively combo break, as well as, attack while you're in defense. One last interesting bit, and this doesn't apply to just the Big Mecha Koopa, but if you were to catch a Big Mecha Koopa or a small Koopa or whatever mid-flight, then whoever catches it is no longer affected by the explosion. So what you can do as the person spawning the Koopa is you can pull it out, Z-drop it in the air, catch it on the way down, and then you'll be safe from the explosion. I recommend catching it by flicking the C stick back so that you come out with a B air, because a B air will auto cancel when you hit the ground and you'll get the most time to do what you wish. All this is well and good, but the real icing on the cake is when you combine the big Mecha Koopa with the Koopa Clown Car. There's a lot of room for shenanigans there. When someone is dealing with the Koopa Clown Car, usually all they do is just block instead of getting out of the way. When you have a big Mecha Koopa, you can charge at them with the cart, jump, and then Z-drop the Koopa. Since you have technically thrown the Koopa, you will no longer be harmed by the explosion, and they will more or less just have to sit there and take it. That is assuming that they block it, because every single version of the Koopa Clown Car will also be able to combo into the big Mecha Koopa explosion some way. The normal Clown Car will combo into the big Mecha Koopa throw at higher percents if you toss it up. At lower percents, you might be able to just Z-drop it right on them. The main hit from the side 2, the Koopa Drift, is pretty much set knockback. Like, it won't kill at 1000%. And it will always pop them right in front of you. So you can effectively just toss it right at them and free combo. The side 3 variant is the one that buries, so it's obvious you just Z-drop and it makes the explosion. There wasn't really anything interesting here that you wouldn't just immediately think of off the top of your head, so I didn't include it in any footage. As for which one I think is the best, personally I think the variant 2, the Koopa Drift, is the best because it has a nice little trick to it. You see, when you drift in the Koopa Clown Car in the side 2, you're creating sparks with their own hitboxes the entire time. Another interesting trait about the big Mecha Koopa is that if you out-prioritize it with another move, you will remain totally fine, but the explosion will still hit your opponent. So when you drift with the Koopa side 2, that's exactly what happens. It'll also, if it hits the opponent with the Koopa Drift naturally, it will drag them along for the entire ride and then explode on them at the end. In addition, of the 3 variants, the hop cancel that happens out of the Koopa side B is the lowest with the second option, effectively tightening the combo between the initial hit of the car and the Z-drop. One quick note before we get to the last point. It's a common tactic for Bowser Jr. to up B out of his car jump. It's kind of a fake out. If you're holding a Mecha Koopa when you jump out of the car, you cannot throw the big Mecha Koopa. You can still swing your hammer, which is interesting and something you might be able to make use of, such as a way to get your clown car back when you're hanging out without it and attacking him with the hammer. But you will need to air dodge in order to avoid potentially killing yourself with the explosion. The last piece of tech I've got for you focuses around what happens when your opponent shields. It is not uncommon for an opponent to try and shield while they are waiting for you to come down from your Koopa Clown Car jump. The big Mecha Koopa does actually a pretty large amount of shield damage. If you combine this with an attack afterwards, specifically a smash attack, you can get some wonderful results off it. There are 4 options I can recommend out of this scenario. The down smash will straight up destroy your opponent's shield. For a lazy player like me, I don't want to have to worry about direction. This is the most consistent that I found, and I personally find it to be the easiest one to destroy shields with. With the down smash, there is a danger of the spot dodge, which is why you might want to use forward smash or jabs. Forward smash will catch spot dodging, and jabs won't destroy shield just quite quick enough. So there are flaws in both, especially if you're too close and forward smash will whiff on your opponent. If you don't want to break the shield at all, the shield damage from the car and the Koopa will be enough that if you up smash right on top of them, it will shield poke them. This may be character specific though. Thanks for watching. I hope you find this tech useful.